Hola y bienvenidos a Lightspeed Spanish. Today I am going to help you with something that's probably causing you a bit of an issue, and that is the amount of time that you've been learning Spanish and the level of Spanish that you have. How many times have I heard, I've been learning for 5 years, I should be so much better than that. I've been learning for 10 years, I should be fantastic by now. Why am I not? Well, I'm going to tell you exactly why saying that is not correct. No, definitely not. Para nada. And I'll explain why en la segunda parte. Ojalá tuviera yo un español más decente. So I recall many years ago, I said to a Spanish speaker, I said, I've been learning Spanish now for 4 years. And she said, deberías hablarlo fluidamente, ¿verdad? And you should be speaking it fluently. And at the time, I didn't feel like I was speaking it fluently. I knew that I had so many holes. My Spanish looked like a bit of Swiss cheese. And I felt embarrassed. And I thought, wow, yeah, I've been learning it for 4 years. I should be so much better. The amount of times I've heard people say that. I've been learning for 5 years. My wife says I should stop. Surely I've learned enough. And on it goes. Well, I'm going to explain to you why that logic is not really logic. It's wrong. It's a false equivalence. Yes, a little bit of science we're going to put in here. Let me explain exactly. So you've been learning Spanish for 5 years. Let's say, it doesn't matter. We're going to use years as a measurement. You've been learning Spanish for 5 years. And what you've been doing is you've been going to a class for 2 hours a week, a nice intense class. And not only that, because you're a very good student, and this is taking up the bar, yeah? This is moving up the bar. Most people will have a class for a couple of hours a week. You were a good student, and so you were studying half an hour every day of the week. And so what does that mean? Half an hour every day and your 2-hour class. Wow, really doing well. That means that you have studied 6 hours a week. 6 hours Spanish, intense studying. Now let's just say that a miracle passed and you actually studied 6 hours a week for 52 weeks. Not normally. We have Christmas, we have Easter, we have the summer holidays, but let's just say, just to make it fair, 52 weeks of a year, you have studied 6 hours a week. How much is that? 312 hours a year. 312 hours. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? A big chunk of learning. And let's say that an average learning day is 12 hours. Let's just say that, okay? It's a bit more, but I'm being kind. That means that you have studied 26 days in a year. 26 days. Now I'm being very generous here. Let's exaggerate that and say you've studied 1 month in 1 year. 1 month of intense study. And yes, you've probably worked it out. Therefore, if you've studied for 5 years, you have studied for 5 months. Truly, you've studied for 5 months. If you want to look at it in the cold light of day of how much time have I spent studying? If you've been studying for 2 years, and it seems like a long time, 2 months. 2 months you've been studying. So imagine now you talk to somebody and they say, how long have you been studying? And you say, I've been studying for 10 months. And they say, well, wow, because your Spanish is excellent. What you don't tell them is that 10 months is across 10 years, but it's not important. The truth of the matter is, in terms of study, for every year you've studied a month, and that's pretty good. Most people don't do half an hour every single day of the week and 2 hours in a class. Some people do more. But if you did double that, let's say you did an hour a day, okay, in your 2-hour class, it would still mean every year you only study for 2 months. And so in 5 years, you haven't even studied a year's worth of Spanish. And that's why I've been studying Spanish for 5 years, a false equivalence. We're trying to link it to time, to years passing, but we're not linking it to study time. Study time is what's going to make your Spanish good or not. So if you want to make your Spanish good, you have to up the time, because as you can see, it doesn't matter that 10 years have passed. It's still only 10 months unless you double it or triple it. Or unless you go and experience Spanish immersion. Now that really does something. For example, on our Spanish immersion courses, people come for 5 days, let's say, from the morning until the evening. All they have is Spanish. Spanish restaurants, Spanish lessons, super intense lessons, restaurants, activities, conversation, dinner, conversation, Spanish. So let's say they do 12 hours of Spanish a day for 5 days. That's 60 hours of Spanish. So the equivalent of 1 week of immersion is worth 10 weeks of study at home. So you imagine you're compressing like 2 months and a bit into a week. And it's for that reason that people who come on our immersion course, after a week, their Spanish has really, really accelerated. And that's because that isn't normal. When we're learning in our country that doesn't have Spanish speakers all around us and we're not listening to Spanish all day, well, it's slower. But not everybody has the luxury of getting themselves into an immersion situation. And so if you don't have that possibility, be kind to yourself and say, I've been learning for 5 months rather than 5 years, because that's more like the truth. Así que chicos, no pasa nada. Yo llevo 26 meses aprendiendo español. No es verdad, porque yo vivo en España y también viví 2 años en México en una clase de inmersión. Así que yo tuve el lujo de estar viviendo en un país de habla hispana, pero no es común. Así que si queréis tener esa experiencia de inmersión, tenemos 4 cursos este año: abril, mayo, septiembre, octubre. Solamente 1 semana y lo vas a pasar fenomenalmente bien. Bueno chicos, muchas gracias. Hasta luego. Adiós.